Welcome to Wednesday, August 6, 2025, your day weather podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. It's really more of the same here in the coming days. Hot, sometimes smoky and hazy, depending on where you are, with very low humidity, very high fire danger, with thunderstorms around the edges. We'll continue to see thunderstorms around the edges of the high, where there is a little bit of moisture. Very dry, very warm conditions will be noted elsewhere. We have this August cold front coming in, really a cold front you would typically see at the end of August. But we're seeing one here at the beginning of August. This is going to cool things off in the central and northern Rockies and then eventually out into the plains. As early as Friday, it's going to really cool off in parts of the Pacific Northwest and Montana, and that cooler air will spill south over the weekend. Third week of August is when we're kind of looking at maybe the next decent surge of subtropical moisture coming up from the south. And really, basically, it'll be behind that cold front, but it's going to take a week for that cold front to transit all of the U.S. and then have the return flow come back up from the south. So we're going to unfortunately see more of this. Yes, it makes for a pretty sunset, but it is getting smoky and hazy in some areas. Enough that through the smoke you can see sunspot activity. Of course, you don't want to look straight at that, that's for sure. But the smoke and haze really filling up Estes Park there in northern Colorado yesterday. We've got a lot of fire activity that's flared up in northwest Colorado. So you can see from the latest smoke map where the smoke plumes are right now. And with the very dry conditions, the low humidity, and unfortunately there's going to be some breeziness with this cold front coming in this weekend. That's going to exacerbate the fire situation for sure, especially west of the Continental Divide. And all of that pink shows you where we have red flag warnings for very, very high fire danger, something that we'll need to keep an eye on. So we'll end on a positive note with our photos with a beautiful rainbow out of Blue Mound, Kansas here over the last couple of days. Satellite photos show some thunderstorms up into Minnesota, Iowa there, eastern North Dakota. Those are those nocturnal thunderstorms that form in the northern plains and northern Rockies late in the day and then continue into the overnight hours. But you can see there's really not much happening elsewhere because of that big high sitting over New Mexico and the flow of the air just taking any subtropical moisture and shunting it out into the Pacific. And we continue to get pushed, onshore flow continues to push into the Pacific Northwest and California. And basically, that's where we're going to be here through today. That's where we're going to be through tomorrow. Now, we do have a little bit of humidity underneath in the Four Corners region. This is that area of moisture we saw late last week that could produce a little bit of thunderstorm activity, and it will. But as we know, sometimes you don't want them because if they don't produce a lot of rain, they can be fire starters. And when we look at the thunderstorm risk today, you can see underneath that area of moisture right there, we do have some precipitation chances, but also a lot of lightning chances. Then on the edges, thunderstorms are going to be a possibility today. Tomorrow, kind of a similar situation. A little bit of that moisture trapped down here. Thunderstorms starting to approach because of that cold front from Montana. And then these late afternoon and evening thunderstorms will continue. And these thunderstorms, like this cluster of thunderstorms right here overnight tonight, will cause some thunderstorms in the overnight hours right there as they continue into the nighttime. And we'll probably see that as we get into Thursday and then Friday, kind of a similar situation. We do have a little bit of resurgence for far southern Arizona, maybe coming in Friday and over the weekend, but you can see very, very dry conditions will be noted elsewhere, but thunderstorms will continue for the Dakotas and into the far northern plains. Then as we go into the weekend, let's start with Friday. On Friday, we're going to see a strong trough for this time of year ride the U.S.-Canadian border, and there will be a cold front along and just on the back side of this trough as it comes on through. You can follow the wind barbs here, so you can see the northerly winds will become ahead of it. However, out ahead of the front, this is where the fire danger situation is always bad because when you get these fronts like this coming in, the winds really pick up ahead of the front. So we're going to see Thursday and especially Friday as a kind of couple of critical days in terms of fire conditions across the region because of this front bringing a change in air pressure, bringing a big difference in gradient. See how close these lines are? This is going to pick up the wind right along the Interstate 80 corridor and elsewhere. Then the front swings through, and as it does so, look at the cool air behind it. These are the temperature anomalies by noon Mountain Time on Friday. Pretty significant cool down. And Saturday, that cooler air spreads farther to the south and to the east, really getting the central and northern Rockies and the central and northern plains. On Sunday, the system advances to the east, and the cool air comes in behind it with the ridge in the Gulf of Alaska. So we got a pretty good ridge and trough configuration here for August across the central and western United States. So that's going to spill the cool air along and east of the divide. That's going to cause some upslope. These are the temperature anomalies on Monday. Pretty significant cool down, again, right along and east of the divide, and there will be some upslope. So there will be some front range showers, thunderstorms in that upslope flow along with those cooler temperatures on Monday. That will allow some heat to actually move into California. Parts of the Pacific Northwest get a break from the coolness temporarily, and they start to warm up again while the cooler air heads into the Midwest. Precipitation-wise through Monday, this front is not going to be a very productive one. I do think there's going to be more rain here than it shows, especially on the western edge of this. But overall, this is a front that it's a Pacific one. It's not tapping into any real tropical moisture from the south, so it's not going to really able to do a lot, except closer to the front, up here in southern Canada, Montana, and the Dakotas as it heads eastward. Then as we get further out, this is that third week of August pattern that may set up a shift in the weather later on that could bring monsoonal moisture back. So this is by next Wednesday. This is a week from today. We have the high kind of back where it is now, so it's really not going to do much. The trough is in the Great Lakes. There's another trough in British Columbia, and there's that high again in the Gulf of Alaska. But beyond this period, as we get a little bit further out, we do see an eastward shift in the high. So this is for Wednesday of next week. So you can still see dry air dominating here. There's a little bit of moisture around the front. This curl you see is the dry air coming in behind the low there in the Great Lakes. But if we go out a little bit further, this is by the 18th of August. We get the high back where it's more favorable for the monsoonal flow to maybe make a resurgence. So you can see the wind barbs coming back out of Mexico again and getting a little bit of help from this system. Of course, this system kind of doing what it's doing all summer, not allowing that subtropical moisture a further westward extent. But we do see at least around this time frame, around that date, the next surge, and we're getting to the end of when we get these surges, but there is a potential for another one right around the 17th, 18th, and 19th of August if we can get that high to move back to the southeastern United States. And there you can see the moisture feed, if that does indeed develop. So something that gives a little bit of hope, but it's 2 weeks away. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.